All right. Last topic today is environmental portraits. So this past week, you guys took portraits. I haven't seen them yet, but you've all seen a bunch of your classmates, right? Do they turn out good? You guys happy with what they are? Look nice? How many of you included an animal in one of your shots? So we got a lot of humans this time. Good.
Trying to.
Good. All right, environmental portraits are a little bit different. So if there is a continuum of pictures, we would have something like this. So if we think about environmental portraits, that's a picture of people in their environment, meaning in their work environment, in their home environment, in their hobby environment, in what makes them them kind of environment. And so think of maybe a guitar player, professional guitar player. A candid would be them, on stage paying no attention, having no idea that you took the shot, right? An environmental portrait would probably be an intentional portrait of them sitting down with their guitars, maybe some sheet music, looking at the camera and smiling. We know from looking at that picture what they do. Whereas a portrait would just be like their headshot. Without the guitar, we have no clue, right? So that's kind of the continuum of this. So, environmental portrait is portraits taken of people in a situation that they live in, work in, play in, or a place that says something about who they are. So, if your goal is for a magazine article, they're interviewing the architect, portrait that might go with it, the environmental portrait, might be the architect on scene with blueprints in their hand and the hard hat smiling at you, right? We know something about that person based on that. It's not just a headshot. A shopkeeper in their shop. A child in his room, this is kind of an example I always have to stress you have to be very careful with, because that can be a candid shot. What if your child collects Winnie the Pooh and is a Winnie the Pooh fanatic? And you have a portrait of them, environmental portrait in their room, surrounded by Winnie the Pooh, clearly staged, and they're smiling, right? That tells something about the person. So, somewhere in between this, somewhere in between the posed studio portrait, like a headshot, and somewhere in between the candid shots where the people are almost accidentally going about their daily life and they don't know you're taking the picture. So, why would we give these, or why would we take these portraits? Give context to the subject that you're photographing. Give points of interest, something that you need to watch as you don't want to distract from your subject too much. So if it's an environmental portrait of your child with Winnie the Pooh and there are so many Winnie the Poohs that you almost don't even see the child in the picture, that could be an example of being too distracting. It still needs to be a portrait. It needs to be about the person. Also helps your subject relax. We talked about giving people a prop, like they are calmer in their portraits. And it gives the viewer of your shots real insight into the personality and lifestyle. So these often go along with magazine articles, newspaper articles, newsletters, maybe website bios about people, something like that. So, is this an environmental portrait? Okay, why you guys say no? It's more of a portrait, right? It says Bolivian woman, but quite frankly, without seeing any of the background, any of the environment, this could be at Epcot Center, this could be in Chicago, this could be in Bolivia. We don't know, right? It's just a portrait. How about this one? Right, so this one almost went all the way to the candid level, right? Where she may or may not know they're taking a picture. It definitely tells a story. We have more environmental background, right? How could we go a happy medium between the two and get that environmental portrait of this?
Or have the people in the camera or face the camera.
Yeah.
Like they could be in the same pose, but just turn and face the camera.
Yeah. Yep. More of a portrait, not a candid. Facing the camera, intentionally knowing that they're having a photo taken, maybe a little bit more staging or showing what's up here in this box of whatever it is. So a little bit different angle. All right, so when you take these, some tips to help it go better is to spend time getting to know your subject. So again, think of yourself as I'm a photographer or I'm working for a company and they want me to go out and take a picture of this architect who's making this new building. He's really famous and really cool. You'd probably want to spend some time with that person and do a pre-shoot consultation. Find out where they spend their time, what their daily life is like, what their personality is like, because you always want to get their personality in it too. Get a feel for the style of shot that might be appropriate, and just by doing that, you help your subject relax. If any of you had seen your portraits recently where you met with a photographer before day one, I know in some cases they do that. Like they just go and talk, and they get a little bit more comfortable rather than just showing up on that first day and being thrown into it. So it's kind of the same idea. All right. Is this an environmental portrait?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have teacher on there. What else could she do? What can we assume or guess? What can we guess from this photo?
History teacher.
History teacher could be a great guess. What else?
Could be somebody like at a historical site that's like a guide.
Yeah.
A tour guide.
Yep. Somebody at a museum or a guide. But we get the feeling that this is her work environment or her hobby environment. She enjoys what she's doing, right? We can feel that from this photo. Okay. So choosing a location is important. It has to tell something about your subject and add interest to the shot. It needs to add that without being overwhelming or taking away from the shot. It's still a portrait. Don't let it distract away from subject, so avoid cluttered backgrounds and foregrounds and colors that are too bright. We still have to concentrate on it being a portrait with something in the background or the foreground helping to tell the story. What do we know, or what can we guess about man blowing bubble?
Baseball.
Baseball, his coach.
Or retired baseball player.
Retired player.
That's definitely edited. That looks great.
Yeah, that's HDR, no doubt. But we know he's got something to do with this team, right? Not everybody gets to go stand out here and take the shot and have maybe that jacket and that hat. It tells something about it. He's not looking at the camera, but it's very much a pose shot. Do you guys get that? It's not a candid. It's not an accident. Nothing about this was accidental. All right. So picking the environment, you need to know your client and know what your final end look is that you want so that you can go about doing that. You need to make the background or the foreground tell something about the person. Also, what they're wearing can have a lot to do with telling the story, like with him especially, or all of them. Props can make or break an environmental portrait. Think about that. Avoid things that don't quite fit or distract. And the same goes for clothes. Be true to the context without getting too outlandish. How about that shot? And what do we like about it, or what do we think about this person? He looks tall. He looks very tall. It's a totally different angle, right? So that was a fun idea. What do we think he does?
Shoot hoops. He balls.
Yeah. He's a player, he's a coach, he's something with basketball, right? And it looks like he is very tall, like right up to the net. So that's a really fun angle too, something different. Can you guys see the depth of field, how the balls are already starting to blur? So what kind of an aperture, what number are we looking at here? Really low number. Yep, really low, and that's a really cool shot. Also, there's some pretty dramatic lighting on his face too. All right. Avoid a busy background. You want it to enhance, not distract. All right. Any idea what this person does?
Lawyer.
Lawyer.
Something professional.
Hmm?
Something professional.
Something professional.
He's making 120 a year.
Or more librarian.
Yeah. Could be a librarian, could be a lawyer, could be a professor, could be a banker. We don't honestly really know, but we can definitely tell more than just, this is more than just a plain headshot. This is somewhere in here probably. Not enough environment to really tell. He's not holding a gavel or something like that to know, but it's definitely a different backdrop that helps tell his story. All right, posing. Just like last week when you guys had to get your groups to pose, and I know that was fun and awkward and hard for some of you and super easy for some of you, you need to do this with environmental portraits. You need to direct them where to sit, where to stand, where to put their hands, where to hold something if it's a prop. If it seems unnatural, it may feel that way, but it probably looks good in camera. So just, you have to do that. The expression on the face of your subject is very, very important. Consider how it fits with the overall scene. So we don't have this dude giggling and laughing. You know, Supreme Court judge is not, you know, a comedian. So tell the story, tell the personality, get your message across through the posing and the smiles. All right, what do we think we know about this guy? He's happy. He's a what? He's a waiter, maitre d', a chef, something. He's clearly in a restaurant. He clearly has food. He's clearly dressed nice. He's got the white towel around his arm. Good depth of field again, where we see a little bit of blur up close, blur in the background, but we have enough information to tell the story and understand it. All right, some tips when taking these environmental shots. Take the shots, but always be talking with them and engaging with them. Take their attention off the camera. So I think if you've ever had your photo taken, you appreciate this. People are talking to you and you keep it natural. It's not just so awkward that you have that horrible perma-grin on. Don't sit or stand in one place, move around. Take lots and lots of shots. Try different angles, different moods, different scenes. And then look over your shots as you're going. And when you have the shots, you know, respect their time also and yours. Be done. Don't go on and on and on and then come home and have so many shots that it's almost overwhelming that way. Don't drag it out. Be very respectful of their time. You can also add some moods or feelings to these pictures in post-production. So in the digital processing, you can add some vignettes, you can add some old look to them, some haze look, other things that you can do to add to the mood. All right, do you think there's a right or wrong setting on your camera?
No.
Nope. You shoot wide angle or zoom in?
Yes.
Right. Both, either one, just make sure you tell the story, right? You have to have something in the background to help tell the story or something in their dress. Depth of field, something's blurred or all of it clear? Yes is the answer again. You have to do whatever you need to do to tell your story. So we've seen some where everything is crystal clear, some where there's a lot of depth of field and blur. All right, make these decisions based on your needs. This is too candid unless the portrait is meant to be of the baby. It's obviously not of the woman walking away. It's more of a candid. But sometimes you need to get the wide angle to really show the environment and show what's going on.
You know what's in his mouth?
Dynamite?
What's in
I
his
hope
mouth?
so.
I hope it's a piece of paper, but I don't know.
They're one of those countries where they really don't care about their life.
Right.
That could be dynamite.
All right. What's this guy do? He's the ocean spray dude, right?
I was about to say, he looks
Yeah. So that shot obviously has some processing done after the fact, but you can also tell that there's some flash added to it, some different lighting. He's illuminated from the front and this side, whereas we can tell the light source is back here. So again, exposing for your background, making sure that you get detail in your sky, and then adding your flash fill on him. And then obviously this has been processed too. But it's a good environmental portrait. We can tell what he does. What do we think this dude does?
guessing he's a mom.
Ignores his kids.
So the businessman, again, it looks a little candid, but it's clearly staged. We can tell there's some lighting. The cityscape behind him is still very, the exposure is perfect for that, but we've got some extra lighting on the face. All right, how about this picture?
It's perfect.
Right? What's perfect about this shot, if you thought that? Why do you love this shot?
Dog.
because there's a dog. We like dogs.
Personality.
Absolutely. What does this guy do? And does he love it? And is his dog like his best friend?
Yeah.
And his truck is his second best friend? Do we kind of get that vibe from it, right? So that's an awesome environmental portrait.
And that's another where like the clothing makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
That's Jack.
The corn hat and the plaid and the vest and the dirty truck, and we can see in the background they're out in the field, and you know the dog's equally happy to be there. You can just all of it fits. It's a great shot. So your second assignment for next week is to do environmental portraits. And now you're going, ooh. Oh, come on.
So one with the rain people.
Do you
What is
want
that,
to,
like
you guys
4
want to write a
pictures? That's
paper?
nuts.
No.
No. Want to test?
No.
So,
Thank you.
you need to take environmental portraits. A portrait that tells something about your subject that when we look at it, we all know. Nobody here is confused.
Should people review by the auto?
Should have them roll in.
What's the pictures of me in our
environment?
I need people.
Just get them to reveal things. I take a picture of Thomas, like on one of those stretchers where you roll under a car. He's like rolled out, and he's like,
What's the most real thing
Unless it's
ever?
snowing.
Okay, let's look at this and talk about some details. We have to be able to see the face of the person. Typically, they're looking at the camera, or it's very obvious that they're staged if they're not looking at the camera. Don't bring candids in here. Make sure it tells a story, environmental story. We can see what they do. You're going to bring this to class next week, print it out with all the usual stuff that we've been doing over and over and over now, and bring the digital files because eventually we're going to get to editing them perhaps next week. If this sounds overwhelming, I want you to think about, can anybody think of anybody they know or what they might do for this right now to throw out some ideas? What do you do?
I thought about taking a picture of my boss in our print shop.
In a
Like-
print shop.
Like in front of a rack of screens or something.
Yeah, in their environment, in their workplace. Awesome. What else? Yeah.
My boyfriend races dirt track
Yeah.
cars, so I can get him like a picture in his garage with the cars working on it.
Yep. Anybody that loves cars and tools, get them in their shop, something like that. Anybody else have ideas?
I'm bending at a show this Saturday, so I'm hoping that maybe it's like one of those. A lot of people have gemstones and stuff
Yeah.
like that, or I have some massage therapists and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that maybe
One of them will let you.
guinea pig.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody freaked out about how they're going to accomplish this because they don't know anybody? Okay, let's
Figure it out.
think. Right, you will.
Can you do like a baby bouncy thing?
That's life.
Yeah.
That really is.
I love those things.
No. Let's go more with, and let's, even if you can, steer away from kids in their rooms. I did have one girl take a picture of her sister who is really into art, and she had her pose with her easels, and she fanned out her paintbrushes in front of her, and it was a portrait, so it was very cool, very obvious that she's into painting. It wasn't, she thought about it that way. So here on campus, we've often walked around and done this. The bookstore is always a victim of ours. We go up there and we get a picture of somebody in the bookstore that works there, posing with clearly you can tell that they're a bookstore worker. The lunch cook ladies in their environment, some of the student service workers, but if they're just sitting at a desk and you can't really tell what they do, be careful. You have to have more of a story there. Some of you might be able to get a shot of walk around and see one of your other teachers teaching and could I ask them if you can do it? Some of you might go to Quick Trip every single morning and get a coffee, and you kind of know the person that checks you out every single morning, and you say, hey, I need an environmental portrait.
Yeah, see you next time.
Think about your parents, your brothers, sisters, family, loved ones. Where do they work? What are their extreme hobbies?
I was gonna get gas and just pull out my camera.
Okay, can you guys come up with something in the next week? Because you have to.
That's two completely
Yeah, we don't have a choice.
Yeah,
I mean, to get to anything.
yes, two different environmental portraits. Not,
different people and
yeah, yep, different people, different scenes. Or
Let's take one of these.
if you have to do the same person, have it a completely different scene with a different feeling to it.
Yeah.
Like a bus on the bar.